the slides or just the last one?
Well, we're talking about the revenue section.
Okay, so the franchise fees. That's, we're gonna look at that because our bills are already very expensive. And we're charging the consumers. But then on my bill, I think it's almost $15. That's an extra $15 per household.
So maybe I can summarize in terms of council's options, franchise fees, there is no option for the current budget year. The fees have already been approved by the regulator for the 224 billing period. So what I'm suggesting is the staff will be bringing back a report mid-year to look at what council wishes to do for 225. The rates are stuck for 224. But the $30,000 increase here is based purely on the volume that the ratepayers have been using in terms of electricity. So we've been getting this revenue in, but we haven't been budgeting the correct amount.
Then my other question is the interdepartmental charges, they don't exist anymore?
You do, but in terms of the budget, it's just an in and out.
Yeah.
So it has no tax rate implications.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Briefly, like it's Jim.
Nothing else?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right, well, we'll move on to expenses then.
Again, the expenses are up 530,000. I never calculated what that percentage is, but if I do a percentage calculation, it's going to be incorrect in the sense that of that 530,000, if I can just refresh my memory, the reserve contributions are almost half of it. So the real expenses that we're going to consume in 2023 are not up 530,000. That includes a $245,000 increase in the contributions to reserves. That is being funded through the water and sewer rate increases. So it really isn't, we're spending that money. We will be spending it in future capital years, but it's not really a revenue expense increase that we'll be consuming in the 224 budget, if that makes sense. So anyway, salaries and benefits, it's up 179,000. Every year, regardless of what we do, CPP, EI, and WCB are going up. So every year, the maximum contribution rates go up, what they call the yearly YPME. They go up every year by, roughly the rate of inflation. No matter what, the employer has to pay more. In addition, specifically with CPP, there's a phase in. So those that have been following this closely, you'll be double surcharged if you're making more than $66,000 a year now. So there's a contribution rate based on income below 66,000 and thereabouts. Isn't the right number, but it's around 66,000, and then additional surcharge of another, my memory's right, $200 for both the employee and the employer and employee in 224. That will go up to $500 in 225. So they're surcharging basically to provide greater Canada pensions in the future for those that are participating in the Canada Pension Plan that are, if you want to consider 66,000 and above high earners. So that's what that's about. So that's costing around 18,000. Health and dental cost, again, is the cost and usage in our plans. That's going up 5,000. Increments, not all staff are at the top based on satisfactory performance reviews. They will get a step increase. Recreation salaries, there were some errors in the 223 budget. So that's being restated. So, recreation was shortchanged in the 223 budget. Certain positions were not budgeted for, basically. And that's to correct that. Market adjustments, council approved $120,000 last year for market adjustments. This budget provides $75,000 in market adjustments. What is that? On average, that would be a 2.5% increase. It will not be across the board. It will still be the same review process of looking at jobs, how jobs compare to market. But it equates to a dollar impact of 75,000, which is 2.5% impact. And provisions for standby, calling, and overtime. Bottom line is these have never been budgeted in the budget. So this budget is budgeting for those expenditures that will be incurred. We may not need the money if we continue to have vacancy rates the way we are, but eventually, once we're at full complement, budget has to absorb it somehow. So that's the big drivers there.
Just a question on that one, I'm just thinking, where was I mean, we've been doing overtime and call-in stuff in the past, so where is that money been coming from? Just from the vacancies? Okay, so it's still out of HR, it just was, yeah, okay.
Under business expense, it's up 37,000. A couple of interesting items in here. Memberships, general memberships are up because costs are up. Internet upgrades, so the cost of moving not all the town facilities, but predominantly all the big service areas of the town. The campground, town hall, the fire hall, the water plant, the gas shop, the road shop, the arena, the sports palace, both ice surfaces, the pool and all that, moving it to high-speed internet and providing Wi-Fi, and specifically the campground, the rec center, and the pool, and the fire department for their gym and such. That's what it's going to cost. The good news is when we started negotiating with Canadian Fiber, that number was closer to 60,000, and now we stand at 12,000. So they have accommodated significant cost reductions and provided a fairly good service. So in terms of mandatory health and safety, we've made additional allowances in here. The recommendations come from the Joint Health and Safety Committee. We basically don't have any money in the budgets to do proactive health and safety training. So we're at risk there. Yes, we have money to do first aid. Yes, occasionally Public Works will send guys on confined space courses, but there's lots of compliance training and stuff that we need to do that we're not doing. So that's what that 45. I just created a new facility, operator training in the Roney, the arena. So again, this is what investment in staff. So we have certain staff that are qualified up to operator 1. We got to get them to an operator 2. We've got potential retirements. We got this happening. We got that happening. We're not enabling our staff to take on positions when they're open. So part of the retention strategy is making sure that they're qualified and capable of taking these positions once they open, rather than going outside to recruit. Similarly, the transition cost with the peace officer. It's highly, 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 highly unlikely that the town of High Prairie will be able to hire a certified community peace officer. No one is interested, given the compensation package, location, and a bunch of other reasons. So we've made a couple job offers, not happening. So the transition strategy is to, again, invest in someone that has the capability of performing those functions, bring them in as a bylaw officer, let them undergo the training, and move on. The employment contract, which I'm writing today, just before this meeting, will provide provisions that protect the town as the individual exits. So, but there are some upfront costs to do the training. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, I think the next training intake is in, what, is it March?
Yeah, March.
Yeah, March 1st. So,
Just cool now. Check your way.
I do have a 3D printer.
Yeah. We'll 3D print them.
So again, that transition cost is a one-time cost. You know, if that was like a pressure point, like we can manage the one-time cost through other mechanisms, but it's in the budget for now. So professional services, it's 49,000, and there's some weird stuff in these classifications, but that's what they are historically, so I'm not gonna change them. Professional services up 49,000. Engineering rate adjustments, some slight rates in the engineering adjustment rate, and a bit more volume in some particular areas to do some outstanding stuff. So 10,000 there. Campground management fee. We're doing, you know, as we get the current agreement, which we're changing, basically allows, we pay the camp attendant based on volumes. So if the campground park is fully occupied, they're getting more than adequately compensated. So we need to, and we are changing that remuneration with the external contractor who maintains the campsite. But it still means the budget has to be adjusted. So where we're going is capping the monthly fee, so he doesn't participate in 100% of the revenue inflows. We take off some overhead costs, cost to recoup the internet, and still provide adequate compensation to the individual or firm that may be managing that in future years. So given the current contract, there's been too much money going out the door and not enough staying in the town. So that's what that's about. But it does amend the budget a bit. Insurance premiums, $15,000 increase, which is a budgeted 5% increase across the board. Insurance will be going up every year for the foreseeable future. 5% rate increase is very modest. We're in a big pool. It is a modest increase given the exposures municipalities have. Again, I'm doing some research on allowing not-for-profits to piggyback on our program, and there is a supplementary program that allows them to do that. And anecdotally, I asked Sean, I know at this agency, to flip me a list of claims in the last year in Alberta. Total paid claims by municipalities was $32 million. Some claims were multi-million, involving particular facilities. You know, so your heavy hitters are your recreation facilities. You know, there's some heavy hitters out there. So we got to make sure people renting our facilities and us are adequately insured. Street parties would be another interesting one. Road closures, it seems innocent. Let's close the road to have this community event. Wait till a truck goes through the barricade, and you know, doesn't matter who's got the insurance. Municipalities have bigger pockets than the businesses in town, so we're going to be involved in any suit.
Just a question, and maybe those that were in Alberta municipalities, I know 2 years ago, because our insurance is through Alberta municipalities, right? Yeah. They were boasting how they were saying, oh, our rates aren't going up. We've been able to maintain the rates and, you know, way to go. Is that that's not happening this year, it's going up for sure, or do we just guessing at that?
We're guessing at that, we haven't had confirmation, but they will not be able to hold the line because the policies that they provide are excellent policies, and it's all based on replacement cost. Given what's happened to replacement cost of vehicles alone, there has to be premium increases because the cost of equipment has skyrocketed. So, since we have replacement insurance, which is a great thing, it's gonna cost more. So again, if you look at it from that perspective, it is additional protection the municipality has by paying a bit more in premiums.
I was just wondering where we were through, several years ago, we were through the AUMA, I think we were using Phoenix Insurance or something, but then, Meritor, Three Hills, and Grimshaw all lost their arena in the same year, and the insurance company decided they wanted to recoup all that money in 1 year, so.
So it's a bit of a myth that our insurance is through AM because they just act as the administrators of the program. Same with our benefit programs. We're actually with Sun Life, and they're just the flow for the pool. The members get a better rate. Same thing with the insurance. Some of our insurance is held by this company, but then in certain risk areas, they co-insure with other companies to provide better overall insurance. But I just can't see the rates not going up. Under materials and supplies, again, the big thing is the chemicals, mainly the water chemicals and the pool chemicals. Slight increase in the safety apparel, because you need to buy protective equipment for staff in certain areas, and we need to refresh it, so let me leave it at that. Various other supplies and all classifications, so that's the catch-all. It's like $500 here, $400 there, and the like. Supplies, equipment, and machinery, we're actually reducing that line because there is adequate amounts there. Repairs and maintenance is actually down, so there was some non-recurring emergency repairs in 2023. So we had, at the last minute, before the 2023 budget was approved, there was emergency adjustments to the budget then. We're rolling those out. So this is I guess, proof in the pudding that we've gone through the base budget to say this is non-recurring, it's not staying in the budget, we backed it up. So there's an example. Utilities, 14,000 overall, mainly increases in a couple service areas, nothing. It seems like a lot, but our total utility bills, we'll get it for the next meeting, but it's in the $800,000 range. Don't quote me on that, but it's a big number. Other expenses, carbon tax, imagine that. So carbon tax, and there's some other minor little adjustments. And then the other increase is $245,000 increase in additional reserve contributions, and that's purely coming from the increase in the water and sewer rates. It's not all the increase because some of the base costs is in those units gone up too. So some of that's been applied to operational needs, but 250,000 additional contribution to reserves roughly is being made, or being suggested to be made. Other core programs in the budget, FCS, Senior Transportation Museum, it's flat. We've got their request and are asking for anything more. Airport, that's standard. The library board is looking for an increase. Peace Library System, this is a weird and wonderful one, but it's in there for now. Grants to organizations, and again, whatever you want to call them, grants to organizations, sponsorships, whatever, in totality, it's the 35,000. And bursary allowances in the budget, flat, So all those sort of base programs are in at the base amounts. The library board is looking for a slight increase. The next page is stuff that isn't currently in the budget. So when we get into budget deliberations, these are the items, and it's not a completed list yet, so don't hold me just to this list. But to date, we've identified that council wishes to discuss having stars as a separate line item in the budget. Staff are still advocating for tree hazard assessment for our tree inventory. Do we need it? We don't need it. We can let the trees fall. So last year, we had 5 major trees in town ripped down unexpectedly. One of them was adjacent to another tree that fell, and then a week later, one of the staff was driving by and says, "Hey, that tree is just split." So, got to bring in the crews. They actually put I don't know what the correct term is, put a girdle on it. Yeah, whatever, and stabilized it till the crews could get there to do the removal. Weed control program, we've been doing weed control, but at a modest level. Right now, specifically in the trails and some of the ditches, they need greater need, or you're gonna see a noticeable degradation in those, on the adjacent to the trails and adjacent to the ditches, because we don't have adequate funds to do a proper weed control program. And the good news, when I talk about providing staff with training opportunities, we have currently 1 staff that is undergoing the training to apply these weed applications, so you need specialized licensing. And that training is underway. So, it's a good news story, because then we can redeploy some of his hours to do this and drop the contract. So, but until that happens, I'll probably need a few dollars more. Across everywhere, the aquatic center, has over the last few years started a more preventive maintenance program. Some of the facilities don't have a preventive maintenance program. So the aquatic center has Simcoe as our contractor, and they come in and manage the compressors, this and that, and do preventive maintenance on an ongoing basis. Some of our other facilities, we respond to the issues. Long run, it's going to cost us more. So it's a bit of money to build it. It's $7,500 this year. That will have to grow in future budget years. Boulevard grass cutting, staff will come back and say, here's the challenges of our current program. Here's some options. You want to do, council? So that will be coming back on the 9th or at the end of December. So overall reserve contributions, the reserve contributions are up by roughly the $250,000. This is the proposed allocation of where that money goes. So, we're trying to do a better job matching, specifically water and sewer, gas, that those revenue streams that are coming out of those units that are self-sustaining are getting the reinvestment back into their dedicated reserves. So that's what's in the budget. So again, council, even though it has approved the guidelines saying no change in service levels and all that, occasionally councils are known to change their mind. So there's always that option. It's kind of, from an administrative perspective, it's really hard to respond to service level implications on short notice. Similarly with the cuts to the Grass Boulevard issue last year, all the data wasn't there when council made the decision. So rash decisions may result in unwanted consequences. So council's going to consider service reductions. We need a bit more time to crank out the implications of them. basically, you can accept or reject and do whatever you want with anything that's before you. You can look at some deferrals in some area, you can look at phasing, look at tax rate changes. Right now, which I didn't put on the slides, we're sitting at a 2.5% tax rate increase. So that's with all this except those additional items that were 2 slides before. So anything in that base budget that we went through and I gave explanations that this is changing, that's changing. All the compensation changes we talked about, pension changes, salary changes, it's all in that 2.5%. And then there are a few minor items that council can consider. So the rest of it is materials that aren't before you tonight. But just to give you a preview, again, we got to get that 5-year, 3-year operating and capital outlook done, and present that prior to the budget being adopted. In December, when we come back, we'll have the capital forecast before council. I'm just going to jump ahead to the slide that summarizes the operating budget, which is on page 52. So the proposed budget does maintain programs and service levels. It does address the issue of investing further in asset renewal. Definitely says, like any provincial government, federal government, we could use some help. And more importantly, especially with those reserve contributions, it sets the stage for future years' budgets. So, I know there's always angst for any tax increase. The issue is when you want to deal with the items. You want to have that 39% tax rate increase because you didn't plan for it, or you want to have a modest tax increase and control your destiny better in terms of flexibility, in terms of what programs and what infrastructure gets repaired and the timing of that. So that's really the challenge. And from my perspective, even with 2.5% tax rate increase, what you're seeing, and we'll see across the province, 6.6% of Edmonton, that's going to be the norm because of cost containment over the last few years. COVID did one good thing. It bought time for municipalities not to spend. And now we're back into, okay, now we got to repair this stuff because we have 3 years of backlog work that didn't get done because of circumstances. So the only point I want to make on the capital budget again is on page 54. So other than provincial grants coming into the capital program, we have no funding source for the capital program. We get the MSI, we get the gas tax money. We may get an occasional provincial grant for water plant. That's all great. Everything else has to be funded through the tax rate. And, don't get confused about reserves. Reserves are funded from the tax rate increase. The levy goes into the reserve, then council will allocate it to these projects. There's no other funding source for the capital programs. So that operating budget contribution to reserves is critical to maintain and fix our future infrastructure needs. So that sort of tries to outlay that we have in the case of water and sewer, some user fees. We go into the operating budget, a portion of that is put into reserve to fund the capital needs of those service areas. And that's the prudent way to do it. So municipalities that have been slashing their reserve contributions and deferring maintenance and doing that, there will be a significant long-term cost for those municipalities. Anyways, the rest of the material will be distributed later, prior to the meeting on the 9th, but we have to deal with it. So what you'll see is detailed list of those special initiatives that aren't in the budget, and there'll be justification sheets. We'll walk through each of those justification sheets with council. You'll see a list of Terry Ford capital projects that will be in the capital program. So the water plant upgrade, you know, it has to be cared for. Contracts haven't been awarded. Some work's been done in terms of redesign, design, hasn't been tendered yet. So project can be canceled if council wishes to do that, but we would lose the provincial funding. So there's options, but significant consequences. So likewise, there are a few projects on the operating side that weren't completed. And we'll bring those forward and say, look, these are the ones that weren't completed. The money was in the 223 budget. If council agrees to carry them forward, some of them council won't have a choice because we've awarded contracts already, but the work hasn't been completed. So it may be midway, it may be not midway, but if we have a contract awarded, you know, we got to move forward with it. So again, even though it looks like we're increasing the budget, we're just moving it from this year to next year and moving the funding that was collected in 223 over to 224. We're not double taxing anyone. We're just facilitating the project being completed. So that's what the future meetings hold. And of course, any other outstanding questions that council has, we'll add those to the list and report back on the night.
All right. So any questions about that? See, Councillor Stenhouse this one.
So, this is going back quite a few slides. You're basing, I don't know what the population of Lake Prairie is, but let's just say 2,600, okay? Out of that 2,600, how many are actual taxpayers?
I don't have an answer for that, but we can report back how many
Yeah.
properties we have the tax roll. My memory says around 1,200.
Yeah, around 11 and 12. My question is, you identified the one item that was a one-time cost from the operating budget on the recreation. Is there any more? I thought we had some other one-time costs.
That's correct. You know, if you go back to the revenue slide, you'll see, you can go back to the revenue slide at the beginning, just a high level summary. So if you look at draws from reserves, we reduced the draws from reserves from 85,000, so that's basically taking out those other projects.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember what they were off the top of my head, but
So the revenue draws from reserves are out, and those expenditures are also out. But again, it doesn't have a tax rate implication, because we're losing the revenue and we're losing the expenditure.
Yeah.
No, we can, sorry, I didn't bring my binder, but off the top of my head, there was, one of the ones that isn't completed is the, you know, pronounce it wrong, the cathodic testing of the gas line.
Yes.
So that was one of them. It's not completed, so we'll be carried forward again. There'll be other projects like that, but some of them were completed and, yeah, they've been taken out of the budget. And the revenues to fund them have also been taken out of the budget.
Okay. No question.
So can you go back to page 45? Preventative maintenance program, were you just using the pool as an example, or that is for the pool? So my question is, should that not be in recreation's budget?
This particular item has nothing to do, well, it could have something to do with recreation. Recreation does have some preventive maintenance contracts. The library, museum, this building do not have a long list of, well, they do not have any preventive maintenance contracts. When something breaks, we phone them and say, fix it. It'd be nice to know, years from now, that furnace is gonna blow up on you and plan for it. So that's what I mean by preventive maintenance.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted.
Clarity on, were you just using the pool as an example for, that was $3,500 for maintenance of the pool?
No, this would be developed, like I'm saying, in terms of this line, Counselor, it may grow from 7,500 to 15,000 to 22,000. So maybe a 3-year phase-in to get adequate preventive maintenance programs, broad-based across all the facilities. We can do that, or we can wait if things break, and it's a lot more expensive. So we've had that situation, you know, particularly in the aquatic center over last year, where emergency repairs were probably close to 65,000, thereabouts. Right, so, you know, there are some monies for maintenance and repairs in each of the budgets, but maybe more, it is more cost effective to manage these things up front. You'll see when we deal with the capital budget, there's 4 furnaces in the arena complexes that are basically on their last legs. You know, a preventive maintenance program would have identified those and planned for their replacement and did things to try to extend their lives. Well, these particular units, like, we can't even get parts for some of the stuff. And similar stuff happens in other areas in the town where it'd be nice to do preventive maintenance programs, but we really need to rebuild because preventive maintenance isn't working because you can't even source parts in some cases.
I'm gonna almost, that's almost more of an asset management stuff, right? And part of that would be preventive maintenance, but getting that long-term view and where we're going is more something that we need. And you mentioned it earlier, saying, well, hopefully we'll get a grant to work on that, but I think we need to work on the asset management plan and keep building it, right? I'd hate, because we got the one-time grant to get started on the inventory, but I think we need to keep that asset management plan rolling. And I don't want to lose that momentum.
And that, through the chair again, that is occurring. We have established a staff asset management team now, and we'll be meeting on an ongoing basis to say what chunks are we picking off in 2024, and what chunks are we going to pick off in 2025. Again, we're sort of at our infancy in asset management, so this is really staff from recreation, staff person from water, wastewater, and Shanda, myself. That's basically the team, and part of it is doing training to get people up to speed about what this is all about, because it also involves changes in operational practices, in addition to identifying shortfalls. So it is an ongoing initiative. Other than the $7,500, we're not asking for dedicated new funding to support it this year.
Donna?
I think this was our first year when we were on council. I think when Leland was still there, we had, I can't remember that company, I can't remember what we paid them to come and go through each of the buildings. And as an example, at the library, they said this AC would probably need to be replaced in 2 years, the furnace in X amount of years, whatever. I don't know what happened to that. It was quite voluminous for each of the facilities that we had, and it sort of did what you were saying in terms of, you know, like maybe 2 years from now, you should look at maybe the furnace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think anything was taken from that and implemented into anything formal.
But could provide some further information, and perhaps the superintendent will remember the name of the report, because I just can't remember the name. But
Amoresco.
yeah, so that report is one of the pieces of information that team and the leadership team has been forecast, so the information hasn't been lost. You know, what we, the challenge with old reports is the numbers are out of date, and you can't do it for what those reports said, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're updating the cost estimates, and yes, your point's well taken, so we are using that document.
I think that's one of the challenges that we've had in the past is the sort of a long-term capital plans always focused on, I'm gonna say like the roads and water was always there, but never really tied in for the rest of the town facilities, right? Like not necessarily for the recreation side. There was nothing for this building or the Moose Toos and what's gonna need to be replaced in those and when. It was more of a focus on the one aspect and not the other ones. It didn't include all of the town's assets.
See, I remember that report, and we were budgeting amortization on our buildings. It's very,
Amortization.
huh?
We still do amortization.
No, but that is with that report, because it's not that far, you said it was back with Linda, but it wasn't that far back. It wasn't that far back? No.
2016, 2017.
Oh, and it was, oh, but I remember that.
Well, I think it, like I say, it's still getting used a bit out there, so. Sasha?
So, I saw on the previous summary slide for revenues that there was some sort of, positive variance for rental rates. So have rental rates increased for our rental properties? Or the rental number?
So yeah, no, still under review. What you're seeing is a more realistic projection of income stream from the rental properties. So we're fixing the budget, so to speak.
And so you kind of answered, so we're not at market, square footage wise, we're not at market, at very market, commercial rental office space.
Until we complete the analysis, I'll defer my answer on that. So again, the big issue with that is how much common costs are allocated to space. So for instance, we don't charge our tenants for snow plowing, we don't charge this, we don't charge that. So if you look at the aggregate rate, you're not getting a full picture. So what we need is looking at the full cost of providing these services to the ratepayers and for our tenants. So, again, when you look at space, relative to other, in larger centers, they would have what's called Class A, Class B, Class C commercial space. This rental market here, this would be considered Class A. A lot of other places in town may not be considered Class A office space. So, there's differentials in the rates, obviously. So there is no such thing as market rate, it depends on the class you want to participate in.
And secondly, while you talked about operating, we mentioned, not operating capital, sorry, you mentioned MSI capital dollars, and that was it, everything else is self-funded through the town of High Prairie reserves. What about things like the STIP program, these categories, did this put you through roadworks, or is there anything for the future that you could apply or have applied?
Yeah, and sorry, through the chair, the administration will be actively applying for every grant that's out there. We can't budget for it yet, but we can for sure apply for it. Similar to the water plant, it was in the capital plan, and the administration was successful in getting a grant for that project, so that will reduce the cost. But at the end of the day, if you see the numbers and you look, when you see that 5-year capital plan, there'll be a funding deficit because we need to get provincial grants to make this thing happen. Like this, the town won't have resources on its own to fully fund those projects. So again, don't forget, we got the MSI, we got the gas tax, but we also have a commitment from the county to provide, approximately $800,000 of funding that is for capital reinvestment. So, it's not a lot of money, so if you look at it, it's, just can't remember, it could be upwards to like $1.5 million. No, in terms of all three components. So let's say it's $1.5 million and the town's putting another $1.5 million to reserves, so that's $3 million a year going into reserves. The water plant upgrade was 3.2 million without provincial assistance. That would have been the only project that the town could afford to do. So it gives you that's the magnitude of the challenge. So what you'll see on the 5-year capital plan and the 3-year operating forecast, they're just there for council's information. It's not a commitment of council, but it just gives everyone a heads up. What does 2025 tax rate look like? What is 2026 tax rate? And especially on the capital side, I'm not aware of any municipality that once they do their 5-year capital plan has it funded. They all are in a deficit position. And the province is fine with that. They just want to make sure you're doing the planning.
But I remember you saying, don't bank on anything, if we apply, we get something, then great. The only thing that's stiff is that today was deadline. So if we didn't apply, we haven't applied.
We really don't have any bridge projects or projects that would qualify under STIP, so that's a challenge there. Some years we might, but in some years we may not have projects that meet the program criteria.
There's 4 subcategories, local municipal initiatives. It's not just all roads and bridges. You're right, we have no roads and bridges. So there's multiple categories, one of which could be water, we don't have those little lagoons and the things that we serviced last year. I know we've got 4, one of them's 18, I don't know, but you'd have to find it.
Anyhow, staff will be actively pursuing any grants that are out there. And we did review that. We've already been turned down from one of our lists last year. It wasn't much value reapplying because they basically said nothing. And I get it. So, but we will be, applying for everything that we can apply for.
Are we piggybacking with the county and their grants officer or some? I know for a while there, they were helping us and saying, here's one that you can apply on, and sort of letting us know on some of those. Because I know we don't have a specific person, and there's lots out there that if you don't know about them, then you can't apply on it.
The county has a new grants officer, so I have with them, and yes, we will be doing everything we can collaboratively as we can. Again, a lot of the focus of their programming is project based, and if there are projects that make sense, we'll bring them back to council for consideration. And so they have a slightly different area, more focused on the social service FCS slant, but all the big funding programs, Superintendent of Public Works, when we go to user conferences, generally there's a session like at RMA that I went to that says, here's grants that are available this year. You want an application, right? So, we have constant discussions with our regional people at transportation and the like, and we're having those ongoing discussions now. You'll see, for instance, in the 5-year capital forecast, we're already building in and shifting the forecast to take advantage of potential rework on Highway 2 and Highway 749. So those things are happening.
Is there any more information on the Highway 2 through town upgrade? Because they made the announcement, we got the letter, all things was wonderful, and then they got elected, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, we don't know if we have the money for that anymore, so I don't know if there's any more.
The last I spoke with Casey River, they're in the process of hiring a consultant to, assess the roadways and start the process of surveying for a contract.
Oh. So they're seriously looking at it then. Okay, because it was, oh yeah, it's here, we're giving you that, we're gonna do it, and then it was like, oh, yes, just kidding. Now that we're elected, we're not gonna do it, and now it's back to the art. Well, that's good.
And I spoke with them about 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
So again, the process is they'll do that preliminary stuff. The rubber will hit the road when the next provincial budget comes up. It has to be in the 5-year capital plan. Otherwise, it's not happening. So again, they will do pre-work surveying and the like to get better estimates for their 5-year capital forecast. But the decision and the real indication of their intent will be it appearing in the next 5-year provincial budget plan.
And it's
that's
not
where-
currently there, that's what they told us at the Alberta municipalities.
It's one.
It's not currently in the 5-year.
So that is our goal as council to make sure it gets on that next.
Well,
year,
to make
'cause
sure, I like the step that Vern said,
Yeah.
that they're gonna be doing some of the preliminary work. I think maybe we can take them to a couple of potholes and show them.
That would be our job to keep it and make sure that they're getting that first step done. It's on their radar a little bit better and they know it's there, so we can keep pushing to make sure it gets on that 5-year capital plan. Yeah. Is there, I know they had predicted that there would be an announcement around the end of this month, which is today or very early in December about LGFM. Any announcement? I haven't heard anything.
Believe they're waiting for April 1st. Yeah, so I know there's intense debate happening between the ministries on the framework.
Okay,
So even though it seemed like the minister was gonna make a decision,
yeah,
the internal realities of the ministries are complicating the decision-making process.
so it might not be in the next few days then, as we are sort of led to believe.
I missed something you said earlier, Bill, it was on the environmental scans, a good news story, and it said something about like $6 billion, what were you referring to, I missed that.
Fort Saskatchewan will be the recipient of a new Dow chemical complex. It's actually around $11 billion project. Some media are saying it's $9 billion, but there's also $2 billion of federal provincial money, so the gross cost is probably in that, $10 to $12 million range. Construction job estimates are 6,000 construction jobs, and then once the plant's up, it's anticipated to be 400 or 500 jobs. Obviously, for a community, those type of plants are assessed differently than other types of infrastructure, so those large industrial, that's special. But even if it gets on the assessment roll at $8 billion, at the current tax rate, that community will be seeing a major influx of tax revenue. They're probably looking at a 25% increase in revenue inflows from that happening, so the local economy will see. So they'll be able to say, oh, maybe we'll mitigate our tax rates down to 2% because we've got a huge windfall. I.e., Greenview has the same difficulty.
actually wanted to talk about that in terms of reserves, and like I looked at Sexsmith's, they have an amazing amount of reserves, right? And so their income tax to their residents is low. They still they still tax their businesses high. But I'm going, cause then I look at High Level that has very little in reserves, but their assets are huge. Where, like, how does that fit in terms of being able to provide down the road, less increase in taxes by building your reserves early on?
So I have to answer this with political correct language because they may be in deep doo-doo. So again, like, there's no magic formula, but at the end of the day, you look at the age of your asset, the physical condition. If you've got, let's say, Airdrie has lots of time to build reserves because they've got a lot of new infrastructure. If you've got predominantly old infrastructure, councils should be moving very quickly on that. So there may be communities that haven't planned, and anecdotal, we're chuckling about an announcement that was made in another community that's experiencing a 39% tax rate increase. That tells me that there was no forward planning done, and they weren't putting away adequate reserves to make the investments that are required, right? So you look at it, you look at the risk exposures, and a lot of municipalities undertake a risk assessment exposure. The chiefs participated in that from a sort of emergency management perspective. What are the 5, 10 major risks? Rail, oil spills, we should do the same thing as municipality. What are our major risks from an asset management perspective, and where things could go south very quickly? Water with the upgrade, fairly good state. Lift stations, it's a toss up, right? Gas line, yet to be seen, right? Basic repair and maintenance of other assets, here and there, but as the mayor's alluded to, without that asset management strategy and that being done, targeting what you need in your reserves is a challenge because you don't know what you don't know.
So is that, like, does asset management and your building your reserves go hand in hand? Like, so if we look at, when you're talking, Donna, when you're talking about the Moose Teeth building, the furnace there, and if we would have looked at the time that furnace went in and looked at the price and gauged it, even, maybe 10% increase, and set that price, and then over the next 10 years, put money aside to purchase that in reserves, when it came time to make that change, we would have money in place. And the same with all our assets. When we're managing, it's not about bringing in, and I hate the fact that we pay people to come in and tell us what's wrong with their stuff when we can see their stuff. So when we get something new, we start right at the beginning and we start putting money away and it goes into reserves. And if we don't have to replace it like 5 years down the road, that money stays there and we continue putting money in so that we continue to build. I think that's one of the things that I see in communities that are successful. They've already thought through what we're gonna do 5 years, 10 years down the road with where we're putting our money.
So for council's information, just in this is a good discussion, but I'll circulate some asset management plans that I've done for other municipalities. And that's generally the approach. Where's your condition? Where's your fiscal cap? And what are the strategies you're going to use to get you there? Right? So for instance, and I'm not criticizing what previous councils have done, but the practice we have here at the town currently is all the interest earnings on our reserves go back to subsidize the tax rate. Yeah. At the same time, the cost of replacing our infrastructure is increasing. Well, we're not funding that through our reserve contributions. So we're just digging a deeper hole eventually because, who should get credit for those interest earnings when it's all reserve money that's generating the interest? Should we put it back into the reserve itself, or should we use it to subsidize the tax rate? It's a political decision. My job is to tell you the implications of doing it this way or that way. But those are the type of things that municipalities have to have discussions at the council level saying, what is your philosophy? Right? And here's the implications of that philosophy. There's lots of municipalities out there that are like, that's the first step to dissolution, not maintaining your assets. Right? Because then you're in a big hole and you got no way out. So there's challenges, like you say, but I'll circulate a paper or two that I've written, and they're going to be similar sized municipalities that I've done them for that says, here's where we are, here's the baseline data, and this is how to move it forward.
Yeah, it's always a challenge to having enough in reserve, so that's to get us up to that point, huge increases now. But I think we are, on the positive side, moving to putting more and more away, which is good. Yeah. All right. See, everybody's kind of a little burnt out. Looking around and
You guys should have had coffee.
Yeah.
I told you not to do that.
So next steps, just so we're clear, we're gonna meet on the 9th, and at that time, we'll sort of go into some more detail, and there'll be some specifics there for debate and issues to discuss, and we'll go from there.
For instance, like on page 45, we go to 45. Like that's the rest of the project, not much detail. So there'll be justification sheets for each of those, and we'll go through each of those justification sheets. In, out, sideways, what's the consensus of council, and then start building that document sheet to say where we are. And that's the process. Whether we get this thing completed on the 9th, highly unlikely. There's probably going to be a lot of discussion on capital. But we can have another meeting, it's not the end of the world.
We will have to have our interim budget approved by, and we can,
We'll be on the fair. So yes, on the 12th of December, there will be an interim budget for council.
okay.
Budget meeting on the fourth Monday. That'll be difficult.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You can put that together yet. Okay, is there anything else that we want to go over tonight? No. We've got this, we've got the overview, we can come loaded with some questions for a week from now and go from there.
So are we gonna get, an email with the information, or it'll be presented on the 9th?
There will be a commitment to have as much material out prior to the meeting as we can. So there will be an email. If you get an email, we'll also have our copies. If you just want to grab your binder, we'll insert it into the tabs and you can take your binders away again. But don't lose your binder, please.
Yeah. So nothing else? All right, well, we'll call it a night.